Hello, 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 and welcome back to Hunter Tune. We're gonna wire up some stuff and do some things.
That's the plan.
In the last video, we got the fuel system kind of plumbed up. I got the tank mounted, and I got the fuel lines ran up to the front of the car. And I also got the exhaust onto the motor, so I have the manifolds hooked up now, and the hot side is kind of bolted onto the engine for good. I got new gaskets, new bolts, and all that kind of stuff. I also bolted the coil packs and the valve covers on as well. But today we're going to try to get some of the wiring situated on the car, and we're just going to get right into it. So to start off, right away I wanted to add an engine ground, which I have a ground actually going from the frame to the engine block down here. So this is just going to be one of my engine grounds that's going to go from the frame to the engine. That's going to help ground the grounds. So we're grounded. Okay, so got the ground done, and then we also actually mounted the battery. So if we go into the back of the car here, we got the fuel cell mounted up. Sorry, I got my fuel pump wires kind of chilling right here right now. Got the fuel pump, or the fuel tank mounted, and then I also got my battery tray mounted into the floor over here. So I just self-tapped this battery tray down onto the floor, and then I got my excess power battery installed. So here we go. This is the ground that we're going to be using. So the ground just goes from the battery down to the frame. I actually scraped all this down to bare metal down here, and it's a bolt and a nut that goes all the way through onto the bottom of the other side. So we have a clean ground, bare metal ground for the battery that goes right to the body of the car. And then I made a power wire off of the battery. So this is my power wire going to come off of the battery like so, and that runs to a kill switch, which, okay, I'm going to tell you right now, it's probably not legal NHRA specs to do this, and I get that. This is just something we did temporarily because I wanted to have the wiring there for a kill switch, and I don't have a metal kill switch on hand. I just wanted to get the car wired up to get it to go make at least a pass this year, or to at least get it to run and drive this year. So we ended up getting a kill switch just from the hardware store, and
It looks cool.
it looks really fucking cool. I hope maybe it'll pass, maybe it won't. I highly fucking doubt it because, you know, whatever. But I do have a kill switch, and it is in my fuel door. So
I'm going to say I don't have my phone. But
all right, so we actually made a little plate to bolt to where the stock filler neck is on the Mustang. So open this guy up, and here's my kill switch. So turn that guy on, turn him off, do what you gotta do, run away, can't start my car. So there we go. This is just a plate that bolts to a kill switch. So the kill switch is down in here. So I have the main power from the battery going to one side of it, and then to the other side I have 4 big leads coming off of it. So the 4 leads that come off of it, are a few different things. So I'm going to have one of the wires, sorry if it's kind of dark, it's dark out, I'm sorry. So one of the wires coming off of that bunch of 4 wires, one of them is going to the alternator. So this wire, this red wire right here, is actually going through under the carpet, into the firewall, out into the engine bay, down there. And then I ran it underneath the engine and zip tied it underneath the oil pan down here. And it comes up to the alternator on the bottom down there, because it is a very tight fit with my exhaust right here. But last year I had the alternator wire coming off on the driver's side, and it was actually getting pretty hot, because you can imagine if the wire's right next to the exhaust, what happens. So alternator wire is ran straight to that kill switch, which when you kill the switch, it should be alternator and battery and everything all on that. So if you kill it, it kills the car completely. A lot of guys run the alternator separately to the battery, so when you turn the kill switch, it won't actually kill the entire car. But so yeah, then I have another wire that's coming down under the carpet. It's a big black wire that is coming down, and that one goes to the positive on the starter. So we have the starter and the alternator ran to the battery. Off the kill switch, like I said, 4 wires. Trying to explain this to you guys so you understand. 4 wires coming off of the kill switch. One's going to the alternator, one's going to the starter. Then we have 2 more. Well, 3 more. I have 3 more because this is how I had this set up last year. I have one of the main wires, one of the 4. So this is number 3 of the 4. And then we have this last one right here. So this is like a 6 gauge or something wire going into a distribution block with 2 fuses that come out for my fuel pumps. So these 2 wires right here are going to end up going to a switch. And this is how I had it running last year, and it was totally fine, and it gets straight battery power this way, which is rad. So these 2 wires off of that little distribution block right there with the 2 fuses are going to go to a switch and then to my fuel pump. So both my fuel pumps are going to be running right off of battery power right there. And then last but not least, the last wire of the 4 is going to be this guy right here. This is just like an 8 gauge wire that I had running to something. I don't fucking remember what it was. But this 8 gauge wire is going to run to
ECU power.
No, Christian's getting ahead of himself. So we ended up going to the store, and I picked up a fuse box. So that last 8 gauge wire is going to run to this fuse box right here. So this has in and out on both sides, and what I'm going to do is actually solder that 8 gauge wire all along one side of these posts. So all of one side of this post will have power, and then the other side will have no power unless there's a fuse. So that last wire will go through here, go to one side of this fuse panel, like I said, and then I can run individual wires off of, you know, the other side. So I can go ECU, gauges, lights, headlights, monkeys, dinosaurs, and bananas. Or whatever else I need. Because that 8 gauge wire should do any like accessory without loading the wire too hard, I think. So 8 gauge should be plenty to kind of power lights and just basic stuff like gauges and all the other junk. ECU. I don't think a lot of that's really going to take a whole lot of voltage, but so anyways, yeah, this is going to be another thing that we got to do. I'm actually going to mount this little fuse panel probably on the dash somewhere. I'm not exactly sure where I want to mount it. If I want to mount it on this side or if I want to mount it on the back side of the dash. Probably mount it on the back side of the dash just to keep it simple and out of the way. But yeah, so car's coming along pretty good, guys. I'm pretty excited. So I'll probably have a wire actually come off of this little fuse box to go to like headlights and taillights, and then have a switch for headlights and taillights. And then fuck blinkers, who needs those? Brake lights, I can just run off the factory brake switch from wherever the brakes are. Just fucking tap a power into one side and then run the other out to the brake light part of the bulb, which should be pretty simple. I don't think I'm going to wire high beams or anything onto the car. I'm just going to wire low beams just so it has headlights and taillights. I'm not really going to drive this car on the street. I never really have. But I mean, I will drive it on the street, don't get me wrong. But just going to do basic stuff for now. Maybe I'll clean some of the wiring up later. But this is still a big improvement of wiring compared to what I was running. Because let's just see. This is all the fucking shit that was in the car. This is legit probably 50 pounds of wiring, guys. No joke. So I deleted a shitload of wiring that was unnecessary, and I had the stock fuse box that I tapped into like a piece of shit, and I was running a bunch of freaking accessories off of it, and like just it was junk, like stupid. I can't believe the fucking thing didn't melt down. But it did work, and it worked for quite a while without any issues, and none of the wiring was hot or anything like that. It wasn't showing any signs of stress the way I had it, but this way it will be way simple, and it will be dialed. It'll be dialed. So what I'm going to do now is I'm actually going to grab the EFI Source Gold box, which is going to be my ECU, engine control computer, and I actually got a engine harness with it. So I want to feed the engine harness through the firewall and then kind of hook everything up onto the engine for whatever it's going to need for sensors and stuff. So I'm going to try to drape over the engine harness and kind of throw the big plugs into the car and see how that stuff looks, and I will pick back up once we start doing that. Alright guys, so we actually took the harness that I got from EFI Source with the MS3 Gold Box ECU, and we ran the harness through the firewall on the Mustang. So the ECU side of plugs, so like when you get this harness, it comes with like a little fuse panel, the big ECU plugs that go into the ECU. So I'll show you quick. I'm trying to make this informative as possible as I possibly can, guys, so I'm sorry. Okay, so one side of the harness is going to have ECU plugs, like I was saying, and then you have accessories that come off of it, like fuel pump, O2 sensor, all that kind of happy shit. And then you have a fuse box. So this is just like for external fans or external sources that you may need. And then you may need to run this stuff to battery, power, or 12-volt switch like it says. A lot of these wires are actually labeled where they need to go. And then there's another yellow wire right here that goes to cooling fan if you decide to use that. So this stuff is inside the car. Like I said, this chunk of the wires are inside the car. Now, coming out to the engine bay side of things, we have the rest of the harness. So coming off of that, the first plug that comes off of the harness, after the ECU plugs, you're going to have one that comes off of it, and it kind of extends out a little ways like this. This is actually going to be your crank sensor. And a cool thing with the MS3 Gold Box harness and stuff like that, all the wires are labeled to what they correspond to. So if you peel back the wiring loom, if you're stumped on what plug goes to where, because some of these plugs are the same, like between the crank sensor and the map sensor and the cam sensor and all that kind of stuff. It is cool to know that if you peel the wiring loom back, you can kind of check to see where everything gets plugged in. So to start off right away, straight out of the firewall, like I said, this long plug right here is going to go to the crank sensor, so we'll plug that guy in, and then we'll pick up after we plug the crank sensor in, and we'll move on from there. Alright guys, so we got the crank sensor installed. The crank sensor is a little bit tough because it's actually behind the starter, and we of course have the starter installed. So it takes a little bit of finesse to kind of get back there. I would feel really bad for somebody if they had exhaust going back behind the motor like normal. But fortunately in our car, we have the exhaust going forward for a turbo. But anyways, so we got the crank sensor ran off behind the starter, and I ran it on the back side of the engine block, and I kind of just zip tied the wires to the coil pack for now. Kind of just zip tied this whole harness up to the coil pack like I was saying. So the next chunk of wires we have straight off of the crank sensor is going to be this bunch of wires right here. So this is pretty self-explanatory. You're going to have injectors and your coil packs. So these injectors actually came with EV6 adapters, which I thought my Snake Eater Performance injectors were EV6, but they're not. They're actually the standard connector that comes on the MS3. So I won't be needing those adapters, but I'm not complaining. So we'll be plugging the injectors in once the manifold is on. Actually, we'll grab the manifold and throw it on so we can actually plug this thing in and show you guys kind of.
Well, we need to get the...
Yeah, we got to put the steam ports on and stuff, but we'll just set the manifold onto the car so we can kind of show them how the wires need to be ran and stuff. Yep. So the map sensor is actually what I got from EFI Source as well. This is a 3-bar map sensor that is straight from the place that I got the gold box from. And that's going to be our map sensor right here, so just remember that, guys. So we'll plop the intake on here like we're going to run it. Alright, so intake is on. Like I said, now we have this bunch of wiring right here. So we can go right down the line and we can actually plug in each individual injector. Oh wow, is this my first harness or what?
Must be.
One. Kite. Injector 2. Injector 3. I'm gonna edit this all fancy.
Oh, good.
1, 2, 3, 4. Injector 4. And like I said, these are just the adapters that convert from, I don't know if this is like truck style or Delphi to EV6. I don't know exactly what they are, but yeah. And then the center one in between the 4 injectors is going to be your coil pack. Kaboom. And then we have this guy right here. So this one comes off forward towards the front of the engine. But if we peel it back, this is actually the map sensor. M-A-P. Map. So that's why I kind of pointed out the map sensor in the back of the intake, because this is not going to work in the configuration that it comes. This is actually strategically placed harness, I feel, because it has electrical tape running all the way back here. So we'll just delete this electrical tape.
We'll delete the electrical tape.
Yeah, well, not delete. I have a fucking razor blade. Why am I being a jackass?
It's up top, over under the latte.
Yeah, so we'll just delete the electrical tape, and now we have a map sensor plug that can reach, you know, wherever we want. I'll put the loom back. Alright, so like I said, this was coming forward, but we will place it in the rear and plug this into the map sensor location. Wow! Let me get up in there.
Yeah.
Alright, so map sensor is plugged in. Now we can keep working our way up the harness to this side. And next we're going to have these 2 wires right here, which this one is going to be for sensor. Cam sensor. So the cam sensor is located on the back of the engine block. So this plug right here is another one of the ones that are exactly the same as the map sensor and the crank sensor. They all share this 3 wire plug. So this is going to be cam sensor, which is going to go on the back of the block, right down in here. Alright, so the cam sensor is plugged in. The next one right here is going to be for our purple and white 2-wire deal. I'm not exactly sure what this one is. Knock sensor? What the fuck? Who the fuck is that? Alright, so we won't be using this one. Yeah, we're not going to use this one. So this is for knock sensor, which we won't be using, because if it's knocking, we like to say hi to Rodney once in a while. And, you know, if Rodney wants to come say hi, let him come say hi. But I want to go 8s, and I don't want no stupid knock sensor saying I can't. So we'll tuck Rodney out of the side. So coming up forward here, we have engine ground. So this is just like a ring terminal with 2 wires coming out of it. I'm assuming there's a few engine grounds in here, which we will hook up to somewhere. We'll hook these up to a ground on the engine block somewhere. I'm not exactly sure where, but we'll hook them up to a ground. Not to plastic, but to metal. And the rest of this coming forward is going to be our rest of the injectors. So we have one. Get out of my way, Rodney. Two. And we have the coil pack wire. And we have 3. Did you take some of these out?
No.
Oh. Wow. Alright. And then we have the last 2 injectors here. Kaboom! Now this is the last chunk of the engine harness. It's pretty freaking simple, guys, honestly. So this one is going to be a 5-wire, yep, 4-wire. So this is going to be the idle air control. You could, like I said, you can peel back the wiring loom if you really feel the need, but this is idle air control. So this one's going to plug into the idle motor right there. And then we're going to have our TPS. I think this is, yeah, so the 3-wire plug that's up here is going to be TPS. So we'll plug that into the throttle position. And then the last 2 are going to be for intake air temperature, which is the gray one, which will plug into the sensor that is in the intercooler pipe down here. And then this last one is the engine coolant temp, I believe.
Yep. Because it fits in there. I already tried.
Yeah. Coolant temp, yep. So this last one is going to be coolant temp, which plugs into the side of the head. Right there. And that is it.
Super simple.
Yeah, it is fucking super easy. Like, I love it. I love how freaking simple it is. Just like the rest of this car is going to be. Alright guys, so picking up on the Mustang here, we did get a bunch of stuff done today. I didn't really film a whole lot of it, but I kind of wanted to give you a general overview of what we all did. We did install some more wiring into the car. I don't know what we all covered. I know we covered some of the wiring coming off of the battery going up to the front of the car. And we wired one of the last wires to the fuse panel that I bought. So I have a fuse panel. Do you have a flashlight, Christian?
Yeah.
Actually, I got the drill right here. All right, so I'm going to give you a general overview of what we've all done today. So I mounted the gold box. This is the ECU for the car. And we mounted it on the dash because why not? It looks good. But we pretty much ran that harness through the firewall, like I was saying, and we ran everything up to the dash. This is the fuse box for the Mega Squirt. And then I have another fuse box under the dash up here. Hopefully you guys can see that. So this is a fuse box for anything miscellaneous. So I have that little fuse box controls the constant power for the ECU, and then I have a switched power for the ECU running on a switch over here. We drilled some holes in the dash and we got some switches. So I have fuel pump, so I have 2 pumps right here. And then I have the ECU. This is the switched power for the ECU, so I'll turn that on just like ignition power. And then when I turn it off, the car will die, just like when we turn the key off. But this is the switched power for the ECU itself, so this will turn the computer on. And then this last switch over here is going to be for accessories like headlights and dash lights and all that kind of shit. I wired everything but the accessory switch, because the accessory switch I have to get my trainee temp gauge still and my wideband installed, and then I can wire all the gauges into one switch so they all turn on as one. And it won't load the switch too much because it's literally just turning light bulbs on. It's not nothing crazy draw or nothing like that. And then we also wired the engine start button as well. So we actually tested all this stuff. It works really good. Didn't really cover a whole lot of it because it's just basic wiring stuff. And honestly, when I do wiring, I kind of just like being in the zone, and I don't really like filming a whole lot of it because I can't focus if I'm trying to explain a lot of stuff. I'm not a good teacher. But anyways, so I have a bunch of wiring down here. We have a ground. I have a main ground under the dash for like main ground for switches, main ground for all this kind of stuff. The switches, the gauges, everything like that. Got my fuses for the pump, the fuse panel like I was saying. What the fuck am I saying right now? Okay, so also we put that kill switch in the gas tank, and we also put in a tack that a subscriber sent to me. A subscriber actually sent me this tack after watching the Sheepy built Civic, and I talked about saying how I really liked the tack that was in that car. And he's like, hey, I have one, I'm not using it, I'll send it to you. And it's a brand new glow shift tack with a shift light that I mounted up here on the dash. So this is my tachometer and shift light. It's a digital tack, and hopefully it'll work a lot more accurately than my $25 tack that I got on eBay last year. But yeah, so this is the boost gauge and wideband are going to be on this side with the tack, so my mind is going to be on this side of the steering wheel when I'm racing to kind of focus on important stuff. And then we have the oil pressure gauge and the water temp. And then right here is going to be tranny temp. I got to go pick one up. And then the voltage gauge is going to be over here as well. So that's all snazzy. The Mega Squirt is plugged in. Everything is good. I got everything mounted right here so I can run cables off of it fairly easily and run them to the laptop without having to, you know, crawl under the dash to get to the ECU or crawl on the floor like a Honda or whatever. So got all that stuff wired up today. Bunch of wiring, you know, shit. So I also actually installed the water temp gauge. I know in the last video I was actually questioning where I should put the water temp gauge, and a lot of people recommended that I put it in the cylinder head where the stock sensor is on the opposite side cylinder head. But what they don't know, or maybe what people don't understand, is the thread pitch on the cylinder head is metric, and you'd have to get an adapter to run it out to a pipe thread or drill the cylinder head out and tap it, which I didn't really want to do. So what I did actually is I actually just drilled my water pump on this side of the throttle body. It doesn't interfere with anything from my knowledge, and it won't get in the way of anything. And this sensor is just tapped into the top of the water pump, fits great, and hopefully should be a pretty accurate reading. So next, we just got to plug in the rest of this shit, plug in the coils and everything like that. I got to get some steam vent ports from the junkyard tomorrow, and I also need to get spark plugs and oil, and then I can plug everything in and hopefully start it pretty soon. Hopefully gonna be able to at least start and drive it this weekend, or start and run it this weekend. Maybe not drive it, but yeah. So, and then little stuff will come after that. Like I would like to wire the brake lights and headlights and taillights and all that kind of stuff, but it will all come with time. I feel like I got a shitload of stuff done already today, so that's probably all I'm gonna do for now. But we did get a bunch of wiring done in this video. Hopefully you guys learned something. Hopefully you enjoyed, and hopefully you get a better understanding of how this car is wired. But that's going to be it for today, guys. Thanks for everybody that's watching on the live stream right now. They're watching me be an idiot and film myself over here on the camera. Fucking Christian is over here. So say hello to the live stream, guys. We got my little GoPro fucking session here on the live stream. But yeah, so gonna put this video out, and hopefully you guys enjoyed it, like I said. And we've been streaming for 95 fucking minutes. And yeah, talk to you later, tush holes. Alright guys, so like, comment, subscribe if you give a shit, and yeah, we'll see you later. Have a good one.